Here we are for another episode of Living Life, where we have conversations about faith, family, and life. And today we want to discuss this principle of humility. I'm Ryan Brooks. I'm here with my dad, Boyd Brooks. Tell me a little bit about this principle of humility.
Well, this principle of humility is such an important principle. It's a principle of restraint, a principle that gives such moderation to our lives and helps us to actually really see life. It's like seeing life with God's lens, the way He wants us to see it. History is full of people who have been so full of arrogance and pride. Solomon said that wherever you see pride, look right behind and you're going to see disgrace following close behind. And then he said, look at humility and you're going to see honor following behind humility. The world has always been full of dictators. I love to read history, and I've read so many books about World War II. And when Hitler started his war and started conquering countries in Europe, just like dominoes, he conquered like 11 countries in just a matter of a short while. And he told his generals on one occasion, Britain is already defeated. They just don't know it. The arrogance and the pride would actually be what would overwhelm him and defeat him ultimately. And history is just lined up with people like Hitler. But whenever we find someone who really exhibits the quality of humility, what a contrast. And there's no person that demonstrates that better than Jesus.
Yeah, so what do you think? Obviously, there's a lot of moments in Jesus' life where he really showed this principle of humility. We could pick numerous examples, but
Right.
What's one that you think really stands out as far as the aspect of humility with Jesus, where he really demonstrated that?
Well, I think one of the episodes that's in the gospel of Jesus' life is the triumphal entry. The triumphal entry, if it had been one of these dictators that I've mentioned that have pranced across the world stage, if they'd have been going into Jerusalem, they'd have been going on a giant, beautiful, powerful stallion with armies behind. That's the way Rome entered Rome. But when Jesus entered Jerusalem, his triumphal entry, he actually rode on the foal of a donkey. It was as if Jesus saw everything that we see as greatness and turned it on his head. And he went in on his triumphal entry in this humble way. That was actually prophesied that he would do that. When he went in there, he cleansed the temple the next day. And as soon as he cleansed the temple, there were blind, there were crippled, there were children that came, and Jesus showed such tenderness, such humility in receiving all of these people. And when the chief priests, they protested, and one of those children silenced, and who are these? Jesus said, this is what God has ordained, the praise of these children. His humility was just evident, but it's what Paul wrote about in Jesus when he said that even though being equal with God, he didn't grasp for that equality, but he humbled himself. There's our word. He humbled himself to the place of a servant, even humbling himself to death, the death of the cross. So Jesus is an extraordinary example of humility, something that we really need in our life because it makes us attractive to this world. Jesus was so attractive to people, and one of the reasons it was that humility. Had all the power in the world, and yet that humility just was so evident in his life.
Yeah, I think the principle of humility is definitely a tough one, no matter who you are. You struggle with that. But for those of people that are watching, I know if you're listening, you can't see this, but you're probably wondering why I'm wearing this shirt. It says brag. I've had people ask me questions about the shirt when I wear it. And I wore it today specifically for this talk on humility. But have you ever noticed those people, and you kind of already referred to this a little bit, but like you tell them something about your life, or you tell them something that you did, and it's like, Oh yeah, that reminds me of the time where I met so and so, this real high up person, or that reminds me of the time where I traveled here or did this. Not that if you travel, you're not humble, but I mean, they're bragging about all their accomplishments and stuff.
My story tops your story.
Yeah. So no matter what you say, there's something that they're gonna kind of go over the top with, and that's kind of what this shirt is about. It's I read a blog recently from this artist that I like. His name is Tripley, and he talks about this passage in Jeremiah 9:23 and 24, and basically it says this. It says, "Let not the wise boast of their wisdom, or the strong boast of their strength, or the rich boast of their riches, but let the one who boast about this, that they have the understanding to know me, that I am the Lord who exercises kindness, justice, and righteousness on earth. For in these I delight, declares the Lord." So, basically what he's saying is like, it doesn't, I know Jesus is the ultimate example, but we can brag about our own stuff, our own strength, wisdom, riches, you name it. But maybe let's not waste our words on bragging about our own stuff, and let's brag about the one who we should be bragging about. And he uses this line. He says, "You were built to brag on him." So that's kind of what I was thinking about before we did this podcast, as far as this principle of humility. And even though it's a difficult one, I think it's an important one as well. We thank you guys for listening to this podcast and for watching us. As always, just go to boydbrooks.com if you need any resources as far as blogs, or you want to contact us about a question that you may have. Please share those. If you have any suggestions or comments, share those as well. Thank you guys. You have a great rest of the day. We'll see you next time for the next episode of Living Life.
Thanks. God bless.